Hello, everyone, and as always, welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. And today we're going to jump back into our basic tutorial for Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2. Now, today is part 6 of that tutorial series, and we're finally jumping into the air war, which I think will be a relief for a lot of people who, if I'm reading comments correctly and whatnot, they find this part the most confusing of the new game. And so we're going to jump into this air war and probably take it over about 3 parts. Now, in this first part, I'm going to show you how to set up the game to just let the AI control the air war. All right. Now, you still have about 8 different things that you have to set to tell the AI how you want things done, but really the AI will do all the behind the scenes things. It will take care of most of the air war for you with just a few basic settings that you have to monitor. Then next time I will show you how to do everything manually. So if you don't want the AI to interfere with your expert air planning, you can do that as well. And we'll go through all of that. And then finally, in the third episode of the air war here, I'm going to show you, I think, what's kind of the ideal way of doing the air war that is sort of a mixture between letting the AI handle some of the behind the scenes administrative stuff and you also putting in certain manual orders and having that be sort of a mixture of AI assistance and manual running of the air war. But let's jump in here and get started, and I will show you how you should just, if you want to allow the AI to run the air war, how you should set that up and what you need to be paying attention to, the few different things that you need to change. All right. I'll also be talking about the overall command structure in the air, which I think is confusing to some people when you combine it with the idea of airfields, but we're going to break all of that down and then build it back up so that you understand it and how all of these things operate together. So the first thing to be aware of is when you pick a new game here, in game options, you can select Automate AI Air Assist. All right, I've got that box checked. And what does that mean? Well, that means that automatically at the end of each turn, and really kind of after the air planning phase, the game is going to initiate the AI air planning routines. Now, it will not override the manual things that you put in. It will only do those things based on what you put in. And so it's going to do things like move planes around, move the air groups here or there, pull things in and out of the reserve. It's going to do all of those things for you based on the simple commands that you've put in. Okay, so this makes it automatic. Now, if you don't check this box, that's okay. If you get to a point and you say, I just want the AI to do this, there is a button on the game map. You can press that at any time, and that will initiate the AI air assistance. Now, you have to keep doing that. It's not like you do it once and then it's over. You would have to do that each turn. Now, that's sort of how I'm going to end up playing the game when I play this mixture of AI assistance and manual settings, but we'll get into that later. For now, we're going to have this on, so the game is automatically going to give us AI air assist. All right, now then, let's go to the grand campaign because the grand campaign starts in the air planning phase. The air planning phase is always phase 2 of every turn. In this first turn, there is no phase 1 logistics phase because, well, the logistics are what they are at the start of the war, but every turn after this, there will be a logistics phase, an Axis logistics phase, and then the game will flip over to the Axis air planning phase. Now let's get this stuff off of here so we can really focus on the air war. And let's zoom all the way out and you can see the big overall air commands. And you have Luftflotte 1, Luftflotte 2, Luftflotte 4. All right, these are the 3 main German air commands at the very top of the food chain. Then you have a few miscellaneous. You have a Hungarian Air Command and a Romanian Air Command. Let's not worry about that for this tutorial. They work the same way, but when we're talking about command structure, let's just talk about the German Luftflottes, okay? And you have three of them. Luftflotte 3, if you're just curious, is on the Western Front, all right? So you've got these three. They're the main big overall commands for the air. They then have command headquarters directly beneath them at what we would think of as like the core level, all right? Those are called Fliegerkorps, and you can see them here on the map. Uh, Luftflotte 4 has two Fliegerkorps, plus the Romanian Combat Air Command, the Royal Hungarian, the Slovak Expeditionary. They all report up to Luftflotte 4 and are considered on the level of the Fliegerkorps for command purposes, okay? Luftflotte 2 also has two Fliegerkorps. It's two Fliegerkorps and eight Fliegerkorps. And then Luftflotte 1 only has one Fliegerkorps called one Fliegerkorps, all right? But before we kind of go top down, I really want to go bottom to the top. And what do I mean by that? Well, if anybody watches my tutorials or has watched my tutorials before, they know I love to draw, and I'm not very good at it. That's what makes it sort of fun. But what I'm going to do here is, I think this will be helpful to visualize. I'm going to start at the very bottom and build to the top for the German Air Command structure. Before I do that, I just want to say though, these are not represented on the map. Now, Luftflotte 1, Luftflotte 2, and Luftflotte 4 do have counters on the map, but you do not move them on the map. You don't, do anything with them on the map. So think of all of these air commands almost as floating up in the air. They're not down on the map. They're sort of abstractions, all right? So just think of them as floating in the air and giving commands to the actual air groups themselves. All right, and how does this all work? Well, at the very bottom, you have planes and you have pilots. And those pilots are married up with planes. They train, they get more experience, etc. Um, but you have planes and pilots. Those planes, or the exact same makes and models of planes, are combined into what we call air groups. And air groups are, they could be at a size of 4 planes, which is called a swarm. In the German Luftwaffe, they could be called Stuples, which are 12 planes, or they're called Gruppas, Gruppe, that is up to 40 planes. Now, they don't have to be exactly that many, but those are kind of the basic sizes of air groups. So if you had uh, fighters, you had four of the same type of fighter aircraft, they could be put together into an air group. Or if you had 40 of them, they could be put together into one air group. All right, and so you could have a fighter air group that has four of one type of fighter, and then you could have a fighter air group that has 33 of a different kind of fighter, and they all get lumped in together in something called an air group. All right. Then those air groups can be lumped together in certain of the same type of aircraft, but they don't have to be the same make and model. All right. So these air groups are the same make and model. These will be like all four of these would be 109Bs, or all 33 of these would be 109Hs. That's how air groups work. Then you take all of the different air groups, and if they're fighters, so this is a fighter, this is a fighter, okay, air group, made up of fighters, that can be lumped together, or those can be lumped together into what we call an AOG, or an air operational group. And an air operational group, just think of it as being like a division of aircraft. And it's all of the same type fighters. All right. You can have an air group down here that is, 20 bombers. That could not be in the same AOG as the fighters. An air operational group is one big overall general classification of aircraft. And so there are four different classifications of aircraft in this game. Things are either fighters, or they're bombers, or they're recon aircraft, or they're transport aircraft. Those are the four types, okay? And so you will find the same type in these AOGs. All right then. AOGs are the smallest unit of headquarters in the air. So this is a headquarters unit. This is a headquarters over numerous air groups. All right. Further, then, those AOGs can be aggregated together despite their type. So you could have fighter AOGs, you could have bomber AOGs, you could have utility aircraft, whether it be recon or transport AOGs, all grouped together in a Flieger Corps. And a Flieger Corps is, if you're comparing it to the ground, essentially at the core level. So it's like a core HQ. All right. Then those Flieger Corps, so you see the Flieger Corps here, those Flieger Corps can be bundled together, and you see it in this case, and put underneath a Luftflotte. All right. And the Luftflotte is the highest command out here on the Soviet front. Now, there is something called OKL back here, which is like high command for the air, but you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do anything with it. The highest level of command you're really going to worry about here is Luftflottes. All right? And so Luftflottes command Flieger Corps. They can also, and I will add this, they can directly command AOGs. An AOG does not have to be in a Flieger Corps, and we'll see that when we come up here to Luftflotte 1. Some of the AOGs are directly attached to the Luftflotte. Now, that's very similar to when we think about on the ground. Sometimes divisions can be out there and directly attached back to Army Group South, for instance, right? They don't have to go directly up the chain of command. They can skip over here, but we'll talk about that when we go out here and look at some of these, all right? But this is the basic command structure. Luftflotte, Flieger Corps, AOGs, air groups, planes, and pilots, all right? And the game models all of this down to individual pilots and individual planes, although you really don't control them. The lowest level you can really control is air groups if you're doing it manually. If you're letting the AI set the missions and do those things, really you just have to give a few commands at these three levels. All right. So that is the command structure, and I'll get this ugly drawing off here, but hopefully that helps you kind of visualize things. Now let's go down here and drill down and kind of point out practically what I was just talking about. All right, you've got the Luftflotte 1. It commands one Flieger Corps. All right. It also commands some of these. This is the AOG level. This is the Air Operational Group level. And this is your smallest command that you have in the air, the AOGs. Let's hover over Luftflotte 1. I'm going to have to do it a little closer in here. All right. Let's hover over Luftflotte 1. Now, when I do that, it's going to only light up those things that Luftflotte 1 directly commands. In this case, I'll move it over a little bit more. You can see, of course, it commands one Flieger Corps, and by extension, it ends up commanding everything under one Flieger Corps, but for purposes here, it doesn't directly command it. When you hover over this thing, it shows you what AOGs or Flieger Corps this commands directly. And so we see one Flieger Corps, then you see Coluft 18, Coluft North, Coluft 16. So those AOGs are directly commanded by the Luftflotte. They do not go through one Flieger Corps. And you can see that here, if we hover over one Flieger Corps, you no longer see those call-ups right below it lit up. It just lights up what one Flieger Corps directly controls, okay, or commands is a better term for it. But everything in the blue boxes is ultimately under the control or command of Luftflotte 1. All right, now then, a few things to notice here. When it comes to the naming conventions, the big overall commands are always called Luftflottes. The next level down are always called Flieger Corps. But then you see these different names, Coluft 18, JG 54, Coluft North. here's a very quick rule of thumb. JGs, these air operational groups, command fighters. And you can see that here, and we'll get to what everything means in this box here in a moment. But here you can see they command nothing but fighters, 138 of them. All right. The KG, so that's JGs or fighters. KGs, air operational groups, command bombers. And that's the second graphical representation here. Fighters 0, bombers 69. And you can see that in all the KG boxes, there are only bombers. Here's another one, only bombers. All right. Um, Kolofs command recon planes. And you can see here the third type of plane is utility planes, and that can be one of two types, either recon planes or transport planes. And when I say transport planes, that could be for fuel or supplies, or it could be for troops themselves. So, air landing divisions and whatnot. And so these are utility planes, which could be of either type, but Kolofs always command recon planes. And you can see every one Koloft is got just utility planes in it. Now, a few of these special ones here, I think this is the only one in the north, Fliegerführer Ostsee. It has both bombers and utility planes. We'll get to that. Transport Group North has 8 utility planes. Guess what? Those are transport planes. And so those are very helpfully named. Your transport planes will be in units or commands, AOGs, called transport. All right. So JG fighters, KG bombers, Kolofs recon, transport. And that really covers the 4 main types of planes. You may have some that mix in some utility planes, but you will almost never, I mean, I don't think that you can even do fighters and bombers in the same AOG. All right? Okay, then. Now, what are we seeing here? Now, remember again, these boxes are out here, but they're not actually represented on the map itself, except for the big overall Luftflotte 1. And if I scoot here somewhere, I know we can see it. Let's get in there. I know we can see it. It's underneath this transport. So let's click on that really quickly. Now you can see it. There is Luftflotte 1. It's the only air counter in the north, but you don't have to do anything with it. Now you can click on it and get some information if you want, but you don't have to do anything. You don't have to move it. You don't have to do anything else. It will try to center itself in the middle of all of the aircraft or different air groups or AOGs, air operational groups in Luftflotte 1. All right, now then, what do these boxes show you? Well, it shows you the number of fighters, bombers, and utility aircraft directly under the command of this headquarters unit, in these two cases, or AOG. All right, and so Luftflotte 1 itself has 138 fighters, 211 bombers, 162 utility craft. Now, the great majority of that is all in one Flieger Corps, and if you look here, actually, all of the fighters that Luftflotte 1 eventually commands at the top are really all in one Flieger Corps, and then further down into these AOGs that one Flieger Corps. As a matter of fact, they're all in JG 54. If you look here, 138 fighters, 138 fighters, 138 fighters. So this is showing you everything under its chain of command. All right. Again, fighters, bombers, utility. This next representation is what's called its stance. All right. And you can set this to either hold, flexible, advance, or retreat. And we're going to get into those in just a minute, but not quite yet. I just want to show you that you can see that on its floating box here of Luftflotte 1. This next representation is whether the units under the command of Luftflotte 1 can fly at day, at night, or mixed. And this is mixed, and generally you'll always have the Luftflottes on mixed because you may have units underneath them that can only fly it during the daytime, for instance, and then others that maybe you want to fly at day or night. So there's no harm in keeping this at mixed, uh, but you can restrict it. If later on you say we're losing too many planes at night, I only want them to do the day, you can change that. We're going to get to how in just a moment. This is what army this command is following. And so in this case, it is following 18th Army. It's that same color of purple, or at least close enough you can say, okay. It looks like 18th Army. Meanwhile, one Flieger Corps you see here is actually following 4th Panzer, or will follow it when it moves out. All right. Then you can see Koloff 16 is actually following 16th Army. And so these can be set to follow different things, and we'll get to that momentarily. This percentage and this bar have to do with how many aircraft are in this command and how many are actually ready to fly. So in this case, in Luftflotte 1, 72% of the aircraft in the Luftflotte are ready to fly. And then you get this kind of visual representation. It's green. This is a little more orange because it's under 70%, I believe. This is kind of a little lighter green. This is a more, greener green, if you will. This one's all the way to red because it's only 16%. So you can get a very quick view of how many ready aircraft you have in each AOG, Flieger Corps, or Luftwaffe. All right? Okay. Oh, one further thing. This up here works just like the counters on the map. This is the soft factor for this command headquarters. It's set on supply, just like everything else, and it's telling you the Luftwaffe, the headquarters itself, not necessarily all of the planes underneath it. The headquarters itself is in good supply. All right. Now then, let's click on Luftwaffe 1. I believe we could have also done that by clicking it on the map. Can I get down there? I'm trying to get to. Yeah, you can bring it up over here. I think if you double click it, maybe not. Right click it. Nope, that doesn't work either. Okay, well you got to do it in the box then. This, now don't be confused by this big box. All this is doing is the game drawing a box underneath all of the planes that are ultimately commanded by Luftwaffe 1. All right. And so it goes all the way down here to the south because down here in Rucklaw, we actually do have some planes that are in Luftwaffe 1. But don't be confused by it. In the manual section, we'll get around to talking about how you would change that. But if you're just doing this for AI purposes or letting the AI do its thing, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all. All right. Now then, what does this bring up? Well, again, do not be confused by these dark blue boxes. These are just the airfields that are AOGs or Fliegerkorps or the Luftwaffe itself have commanded air groups to be stationed at. And so the game will do that itself if you're doing the AI assist. And so, Eben Road, you look at this, oh my gosh, am I going to have to figure out something at Eben Road? No, no. The AI will automatically assign AOGs to that airbase. And it can take an airbase, so let's just take Call Off 16, for instance, and assign it to multiple air bases if it wants to, or it thinks that will be most efficient because air bases have a certain number of aircraft that can be stationed there. They have support units that, determine whether those aircraft are getting repaired. All of these things you don't have to worry about if you're on AI Assist. Now, you may want to worry about them. Catch the next episode and we'll go through it. But you don't have to worry about them in AI Air Assist. All right. So all this is doing when you click on Luftwaffe 1 is it's showing you all of the AOGs and Fliegerkorps under its command. Those are in the light blue boxes. And it's showing you each of the airfields here where air groups are stationed underneath the Luftwaffe. And further, if you want to go look at each one of these, over here to the right, each one of these is an air group And this is the airfield where it's stationed. So Palau, for instance, let's find Palau here on the map. And of course, I'll pick the hardest one to find, I'm sure. No, there is Palau. All right. Palau says we've got the Stab, so on and so forth. You've got 1, 2, and 3. Each one of these is an air group. Okay. It will tell you the number of the planes there, the type of the plane there, and how full the airfield is. All right. If we went and clicked on Palau, you can see these exact same air groups. Okay, but you don't have to worry about that because ultimately the game is going to apportion them, or the AI is going to apportion them in the most efficient way with the air group or the airfields you actually control. And so as we move out here, let's say we've now moved, out here, the game will apportion air groups out here as it sees fit, and you don't have to worry about it. All right. And so just kind of forget about the airfields. Unless you're going to be moving things from airfield to airfield manually, you just don't have to worry about them. What you have to worry about are these commands, whether they be the smallest, AOGs, Fliegerkorps, or Luftflottes. All right, so let's click on the Luftflotte again and talk about the 8 different things you need to worry about if the AI is going to do the entire air war. Okay? So let's look at its card over here. It's Luftflotte 1. It's commanded by Luftflotte 1. Well, it doesn't have a direct command, so it just shows that. If we go to 1 Fliegerkorps, you'll see it's commanded by Luftflotte 1. If we go to KG1, it's commanded by 1 Fliegerkorps, and so on and so forth. You can always just keep clicking out here on the map, and it'll bring up these higher commands. Okay, so Luftflotte 1, it is at that Army level of command. And so the 4X's to me are like an army group, really, but that's fine. I'm going to call them armies because that's what they call them in the rule book. They're equivalent to an army, so it's like 16th Army Command. All right, this shows it's an air unit. This is that soft factor supply. This shows you how many planes are operational and how many planes, the ominous 666, that are actually in the Luftflotte under its command. All of them, including, one fleet, whether directly under command or underneath the one Fliegerkorps command. All right, so it shows you that. You also have this thing called ring circles. I don't really find this that helpful, but if you get out to a specific air group like this one and you were to put, ring circles on, I guess you can tell how far recon can fly. If you go look at your fighters, you could see how far the escorts could go out. So I guess it could be helpful like that. I never use it, to be honest with you. All right, now that we get to the 7 or 8 different things that you have got to input into the game if you're going to let the AI do your air war. All right, and we'll start at the Luftflotte level. Now, you can oftentimes set these other things on the card at lower levels. Sometimes you can, sometimes they stop at a certain level and you can't drill down anymore. But just remember, if you change it up here on this level, it changes for everything under its command, every AOG and every Fliegerkorps. So just be careful when you come up here. You can change it all up here. That's great. And then you can go back down to transport group Nord or North if you want, and change what you can change down here later if you want. But if you then, changed it there and then came back up here and changed it again, it will change for transport group North down here. All right, so Luftflotte 1. What can we change? Well, here we have mixed mission. All right, we can click on that and we can see we could set this to rest, day and night, which is mixed mission, night only, or day only. So let's switch it over to day only, and you see over here, you've got sunshine on a cloudy day, and now you'll see 1 Fliegerkorps change to day only, and everything else out here changed to day only. Now we could also put it on night only, and you say, wait a minute, that doesn't say night only. Correct. At the Luftflotte level, you could not say night only. That's because it has certain aircraft under its command or air groups under its command that can only fly during the daytime. And so you can't set that to night only. It automatically reverts to mixed mission. I can tell you this, keep all of your Luftflottes on mixed mission. Because let the game decide. If the game wants to fly things at night, it's doing a calculation and saying there's good odds on it, and so they'll fly at night. That's fine. So you don't want to restrict this, but it is a way to restrict it if you want to. All right. Um, and so you will see, even though we put night only in this flip to mix mission, everything down here that can went to night only. And so let's actually say day and night. And now you, excuse me, you can see day and night here. And if we drill in, there must be something out here that can only fly during the day. And there is. Coleft 4 is saying its air groups can only fly during the day. So there you go. So anyway, if you're letting the AI run the air war, always keep this on mixed mission. There's just no reason not to. And then the game will then say, okay, well, one Flieger Corps can fly at day at night. Koloft 18 can only fly during the day. Well, that's because it's recon aircraft. They didn't have good night photography at that point. So you'll see that with the vast majority of recon air groups that they can only fly during the day. The next button then is normal. This is pilot replacement. And you can see here, you only want Luftflotte 1 to get trained pilots, or you want it to have priority in pilots, or you want to restrict it, meaning not getting any new pilots, or normal. Always leave this on normal. If you're having the AI run the air war, let the AI go and pull the pilots. The pilots will train in the reserve box. They'll get better. The game, and they have to train as fighters or as bomber pilots. The game will do all of that for you. Leave that on normal. So now we're down to, we don't even have to mess with these two. Leave them as they are. All right. Now then, asset priority. And you have 4 different levels: very high, high, medium, low, and none. What is this? This is how many air groups Luftflotte 1 is going to try to draw to it. All right, so it has nothing to do with like getting new assets per se. What it's going to do is give the priority for air groups and try to draw them to it. So if you want the vast majority of your air groups, even if they're, they start the game assigned to an AOG here in the center, if you want the vast majority to be in the north, let's set that to 4, because you're going to be pulling air groups up here. The game will automatically reassign them to different AOGs, or it'll pull the whole AOG up here and assign it to the Flieger Corps, or it may pull the whole dang Flieger Corps up here and assign it to the Luftflotte. Okay, and so this is how you would say asset priority. I want more planes in the north. If you want them all spread out, you can set them all to the same. So you could put all 3 of the Luftflottes at 2 as asset priority, and everything will kind of stay the same. They're not going to move around really. And that's how this game works when it comes to priorities, is if you set everything the same, it's just the base. It's going to stay that way. But if you kick this up, if the other 2 were set at a 2 and you put this at a 3, it's going to start drawing air groups up to it, either getting new AOGs, putting them in existing AOGs, however, whatever the case may be. And so you do need to give the game this asset priority. Then you have supply priority. Supply priority is every one of the AOGs, Flieger Corps, and Luftflottes is going to have a supply priority, and they're going to be competing with the ground headquarters and what their supply priority is, okay? And so if you set this to, let's say, none, it's going to get no supply, none. No fuel, no supply. If you set it to 1 and all of the ground headquarters are on 2, they will get priority over the Luftflotte for supplies. All right. If you leave it on 2 and all of the ground units are on 2, it's going to be kind of the base. And you may say, well, gosh, I kind of just want to leave it at the base. Um, you are going to want to give priority, for instance, to your panzer groups because they're going to need more fuel way out in front, right? You may win the battle in the north very quickly and take over Leningrad, and then you say, you know what, I can click down things in the north for supply priority. Maybe they're just kind of being like garrison units, just holding the north, and you could click that down. And same with Luftflotte 1, maybe you're just not using it as much, and Luftflotte 2 is in all the action. You may want to change the supply priority and the asset priority, right? And have the air groups that are up here in Luftflotte 1 move down to Luftflotte 2. The game will do all of that. This is all you have to set, all right? The most important thing that you have to set if the AI is running your air war is the stance. And it's flexible, hold, retreat, and advance. All right? Luftflotte 1 starts on a hold. And why is that? Well, nothing's moved yet. All right. So, you know, it's it really a hold makes sense. And hold is what you think it is. It is this Luftflotte and everything underneath it, to the extent they have the same order, are not going to move. They're going to stay at the same air bases. Their air groups are going to stay stationed at the same air bases, and that's that. And they're going to do all of their administration things like moving aircraft around. For instance, if we have the asset priority here as a 4 and we're on hold, this will all happen at the end of the air planning phase. It will shuffle around aircraft. It'll put new aircraft underneath different AOGs or move the AOGs to different Flieger cores, that kind of thing. The game will do all of that at the end of the air planning phase. Okay, so that's hold, and really all of what we think of as the administrative or moving things around happens at the end of air planning right before air execution. The same is true for flexible. And what is flexible? So flexible and hold. What does flexible mean? It's really meant for if you're just going to be moving up a few hexes or back a few hexes. So if the front is pretty stable, so we get out into 1942, let's say, and there are attacks and there are, or attempted breakthroughs, but the line doesn't, or the front doesn't really change that much. You probably want to be inflexible. You want it to be able to move a little bit, right? But you're not going to be having these massive breakthroughs where you go for 100 kilometers on the ground. And so flexible could be pretty good to have it on. Why is that? Well, because all of those administrative stuff functions, moving aircraft around, dropping off supplies, doing all these kinds of things happen at the end of the air planning phase and before the air execution phase. All right? Now then, advance and retreat, they kind of speak for themselves, right? I mean, you know what they mean. Let's say that we put this on advance. What happens? Well, the game is going to run all of its air missions in the air execution phase, but it's not going to do any of the moving the aircraft around until the all the way at the end of the turn, at the end of the ground combat phase. Now, why is that? Well, that's because if you have it on advance, you're expecting to advance a long ways that turn, okay? Because the air planning phase comes first, right? So let's go back and think about flexible for a minute. The air planning phase happens right now. You click F12 and the air execution phase starts, all right? It moves around the aircraft. It moves where it wants these AOGs and Flieger cores to be out on air bases, that kind of thing. It happens now. But then, let's say in the ground combat phase, your panzers run all the way to Riga. Well, it's already done all of that moving around and reassignment before you get to that point. If you have it on advance, what happens is it doesn't do that. It holds on and waits to see how far you advance. And let's say you get your panzers all the way up here to Riga, it will then do all of the reassignment, reallocation at the end of the turn, and very possibly fly some things up here to Riga and station them at this airbase or this airbase or this airbase that you've captured during the previous turn. and that's advance and retreat. That is when you're expecting to move either forwards or hopefully not, but backwards, and the game will do all of its reallocation and reassignment at the all the way at the end of the turn and not during the air execution phase. It'll do it after ground combat. All right, so you have to set the stance and let the game know when do you want to do those things. Before ground combat or after ground combat is kind of the simple question if you want to break it down to that. FHQ, follow headquarters, 18th Army. All right, so the game starts out as the default. You can see it here. Luftflotte 1 itself and the things directly under its command are going to follow the 18th Army. That's probably a pretty good idea. You have two armies, the 16th and the 18th, and you have one panzer group in the north, right? And that's really what Luftflotte 1 is assigned to, the north, Army Group North. And so if it follows this army up here, that's pretty good. It goes through Riga usually and then moves up here. It's going to be moving straight to Leningrad. So, you could pick the 16th Army, and that would probably be fine. But 16th Army usually comes a little further east before it turns north. And so the game has just picked 18th Army. You could also have it follow the Panzer Group. And there are certain planes you do want to follow the Panzer Group, but as you can see, the game has already decided that. And so this is the army that it's going to follow, and the game automatically does that. You just have to set it here and say, I want you to generally follow 18th Army, or you could click on here and you could say 16th Army, or you could come down here, if I can find it, and say 4th Panzer Group, which is this pink group. Now you'll see as we drill down here, okay, so that's the Luftflotte level. The last thing is naval ops. We'll get into that in a different episode. For this one, I don't want to muddy up things with naval ops. Essentially, AOGs, or well, really at the AOG level, you can set this to do naval interdiction out here. It's not something you're going to use a whole lot, but it either has to be set to follow an army or on naval ops, okay? And it can't be both. So if we turn this on and say we want to do naval ops around Riga at some point, you can't have follow army on. This will go blank. All right, so it's kind of one or the other. So these are that's it. That's what you have to set up if you're going to let the AI do your air war. You set up, can it fly day and night? Always leave this on mixed mission. You're going to say normal pilot replacement. You're not going to have any hand in that. You're just going to keep it on normal. You are going to tell the game which Luftflottes you want to have asset priority, or you can have them all set the same and it'll just be the base. All right. Then you're going to give supply priorities. You're going to tell it whether to advance, hold, retreat, or be flexible. And flexible and hold, remember, does all of the reassignment and reorganization before ground combat. Retreat and advance do it after ground combat. That's what you have to remember about that. Follow headquarters. You're going to tell it what you want it to follow. Forget about naval ops, and that's it. That's all you have to control in the air war. Now, it's not just at the Luftflotte level though. You do have to go down here because Fliegerkorps can set many of these on their own if you want them to be different. And so for whatever reason, the game wants the asset priority of one Fliegerkorps to be a 4. All right, so that's even higher than its Luftflotte. So these things that are getting drawn up here are going to be, for the most part, going into one Fliegerkorps. Now, ultimately, they are commanded by Luftflotte 1, but essentially what this is doing is saying, don't put it directly under the command of Luftflotte 1, put it under one Fliegerkorps. If it comes up here, and I say it's an air group, right? So you give asset priority on this level as well, all right? But supply priority, you can't change that here. It is whatever the Luftflotte level is. All right. You can also give this a different stance if you want one Fliegerkorps, let's say to advance, but Luftflotte 1 to hold, you can do that. You can tell it to follow a different headquarters, and here the game has, it said one Flieger Corps is going to follow 4th Panzer Group. And if you see out here, it's this pink, this kind of neon pink. All right, and if we click up here, Luftflotte 1, and what it directly commands are going to be following 18th Army, but everything under one Flieger Corps, for the most part, is going to be following 4th Panzer. All right. And so let's get back to one Flieger Corps. You then, and that's it. Okay. So you go down to the Flieger Corps level, look at them there. Now let's go down to the AOG level or the smallest level. And let's just pick one. I don't know, JG 54. Those are the fighters. All right. Here, you could not set asset priority. That is going to come from the Flieger Corps level. And so these two here are leveled. Supply comes from the Luftflotte. Asset priority comes from the Flieger Corps. But you could tell this day and night, assuming it can fly at night. If it can't, it won't even give you this option. But you can see down here, it shows day and night. It's on advanced. Now you could have this one on flexible, even though other things are on advance or retreat or hold. Uh, Follow headquarters, 4th Panzer. You can't change this. That's set at the Flieger Corps level. You could put this on naval ops if you wanted to, but we're going to forget about that. Um, Now remember, if you change this, all right, and let's just put this on hold, all right, and then let's go to one Flieger Corps and put one Flieger Corps, let's change it to retreat. Then if we go back to JG54, JG54 is going to be on retreat. Just always remember, if you're giving commands up here at this level, Luftflotte, Flieger Corps level, it will change them all the way down the chain of command. And so you got to go down to these lower levels. And if you want them to be different, you have to manually change them down here because it automatically resets them. And so that's it. That is it. That is, you would go look at each of your 3 Luftflottes. You would maybe look at Romanian High Command and Hungarian High Air Command if you want to once they get into the war. But really, these are the 7 or 8 different things that you set, and then you hit F12, and the game does everything else. It's going to set up the actual air directives. Those air directives then turn into missions, and the game will do all of that. It will move these boxes for you either at the air execution phase, either before or after combat, depending on what you put in here. It will move the AOGs or air groups themselves around to different AOGs up here in one Flieger Corps because it's got a high asset priority. It'll move the supplies. It will do all of that. These are just the things you have to tell it so it knows what to do. And that really, forget about these two, keep them where they are, is asset priority, supply priority, stance, and what it's following. That's it. You hit F12 and the game runs the air war. All right. There is one additional thing you have to do, and I don't know why they did it this way, but if you are going to let the AI run the air war, go to the commander's report, go to air, and you see this thing that says change upgrade. The game by default has you manually deciding on the upgrades for aircraft. And so if you have an air group that is flying one kind of jet, or, one kind of fighter plane, I guess they're not jets yet, one kind of fighter plane, and it is ready to upgrade or it can upgrade, you would have to go do that manually. I don't know why they have it manually, set to manual at the start, especially if you do AI Air Assist, but they do. All right. And so just go to the commander's report right at the start of the game. If you want the AI to do everything, go to air, go to change upgrade, and go to auto upgrades. They all turn to auto, and that's it. You don't, and literally, you don't have to worry about the upgrades. You don't have to worry about new AOGs coming in the game or new air groups. The game will reassign them, assign them to air bases, do the air directives, do the air missions. You just have to worry about these cards and these few decisions, and you can let the AI run the whole air war. And so this has been the first part of the air war and Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2. When we come back next time, it's not going to be so simple. students, grasshoppers. It is going to get manual up in here. I hope they don't kick me off of YouTube for saying that. All joking aside, it's not that difficult. We'll get in there. We'll talk about how you do everything manually that we just talked about that the AI is going to be doing for you. So anyway, if you have any comments or questions, please put them below the video or join our Discord channel and put them there. I will be happy to answer them. And, if things come up while you're playing and say, hey, I don't know how to do this or that, it's a great resource, the Discord page, because there's other very knowledgeable people there that can answer your questions, and I'll try to fumble through them. All right. Anyway, thank you guys so much. This has been Strategy Gaming Dojo. I'll talk to you next time.